How was that moment chosen to be made?
One of the things that happened with this scene, when it's first boarded and it's a lot of cool action, it was a lot of chase, fight. That's all very cool, but we're lacking character. Why don't we take some of this dialogue on top of the train and mix them into this battle, lay it through the rest of the scene.
Throwing in those moments helps the peak emotion of the scene.
Moments where Miles' heroic glory are always fulfilling.
There is absolutely no doubt that the editing of Spider-Man Across the Spiderverse was astronomical. And that was confirmed when we invited the editor of the movie, Michael Andrews, to break down advanced techniques in how they made this masterpiece.
Michael compares how a scene goes from storyboard to screen, explored why Gwen dominated the first act. We also challenged Michael on whether the cliffhanger worked.
How Michael juggled the colossal edit or die process that shaped the film, which meant there's multiple versions of the same movie. Why this movie has 3 directors and an in-depth editing breakdown of the train action sequence.
And we begin with a dissection of the movie's iconic opening sequence. This is the Editing Podcast, brought to you by Riverside, a powerful online video recording tool. If you're new here, please subscribe.
Let's do things differently this time. Like, so differently.
The whole idea of the scene is we didn't just start off in a scene, we started off with like imagery, and it's just coming at you fast and furious and just a barrage, and we're basically in Gwen's head. It just gets you right into the moment of what's going on with her.
He was bitten by a radioactive spider. And he's not the only one.
She's full of angst, she's got a lot going on, she's thinking about a lot, and it gives you little hints of things to come down the line in the movie. Like there's like flashback material, but there's also stuff coming down the line. So it was all just mishmash of all these materials that all came together.
So much all happening all at once, and you had to make something out of that kind of like made sense, and it was like settled us into the movie then.
And I kept pushing the envelope. I kept like adding layers of like just flash frames and things that would just make it, you know, visually a little more stunning. Like because it was a drum, there was one moment where a picture of Gwen and Miles that's on the drum should be sort of bouncing with the drum. And I was like, oh, that's cool. I want to do that for the whole scene. Since we're sort of in this drum set and in her head, like the whole thing is just sort of like pulsating the whole time.
Parts of the scene are just like moving to the beat, like they're like have like a camera shake on them.
Yeah,
almost
exactly.
On them.
Sometimes you'll see a little pulse or like a vibration.
Like that.
Yeah.
These little images here were one of the last things we did, and this was sort of an homage to the original artist who does the Gwen comic books. Phil got these from him directly, and I was at the mix stage throwing these in, and I just created like a little collage of them. The After Effects guy took it and ran with it, and he made that sort of all the cool imagery pop in and out.
He hasn't always had it easy.
One thing Phil insisted on was if we show something from the old movie, like this shot, don't make it look like the old movie. We don't want to look cheap. We want to look like we did something. Some of the production design on this stuff is just amazing what they did. We felt a need to bring back Uncle Aaron because there were screenings where one of my favorite parts of the movie is when Aaron walks through the door.
Uncle Aaron? Give me chills
I
every
know,
time.
exactly. I just got chills right now. It didn't have that same effect on the audience. And we were like, why? Like, why are they not caring? Like, this should be huge. Found out, you know, through cards and stuff that like people had kind of forgotten who he was. And so we had to put a little reminder here. And then also Miles is doing his talk up. He mentions Aaron too.
I miss my uncle sometimes. I'm gonna try to do what he told me. Just keep going.
So in order to basically give the audience more of an emotional impact, it was important to put him earlier and give him more screen time.
Remember who he was
Yeah.
and land the emotion of, you know, what he means to Miles.
He's not the only one.
There's like lots of fast cuts going aggressive.
Yeah.
And then this kind of helped.
Now he's on his own.
This kind of then broke the rhythm for me a little bit.
Well, this is a hard image to take in. What the hell's going on here? This is something we're going to see in the late second act, but we don't know that. We felt we needed to kind of settle on this moment. Just go, oh, this is intriguing. What's he looking at? What are these shapes? What are these people? Yeah, otherwise it's too confusing if it goes by too quickly.
Contrast creates focus.
Contrast creates focus. One of my favorite things. Like,
you guys
that's
were paying
important for me.
attention. I'm very impressed.
Let's go.
Oh, yeah.
I don't high five. I'm sorry.
Okay,
sorry.
that was the most awkward thing ever in editing podcast history.
And he's not the only one.
That was a new perspective. I picked that up.
Very good, very good. That was Phil's call. Like, let's make this from Gwen's point of view. She's diving down from the first movie.
you don't.
So like that's meant to be Spot.
Oh.
And there were scenes that we had in the movie that clarified that more, but at one point we had the shot from the original movie with Spider in the foreground and Miles going off with the flashlight down the subway tunnel. You see Owen come in and grab it, and this is just like the hinty version of it.
Maybe the other version was probably a bit too...
It told too much. And, and it was too confusing. Like, who's that? But this is like, oh, that's intriguing.
So you just didn't close that curiosity loop.
I didn't want to hurt him.
Foreshadowing more there.
Yep.
You're spoiling the whole movie before the movie started.
You really are. If you're really paying attention, I mean, it's all there. That's the moment right there, on the train where he realizes she's deceived him.
Some of the shots are too brief, actually. That it's like there's not enough time for me to take it in. It's just too short.
Raises your curiosity just enough.
And this is barely very, very quick moment.
Came in late in the game to make room for that. I mean, the scene kept kind of expanding, but, Daniel Pemberton was wonderful period of time where Daniel was in a room down the hall from me. I've never had that experience where I can go talk to the composer. You got anything? And I was like, well, the only thing is I feel like it should accelerate more towards the end, get more manic and crazy. And he goes, what do you think of this? And he had this great monster keyboard. He starts banging on it and it's making drum sounds, which, you can do. and he's just going, he's drumming on his keyboard and got right into that sort of manic feel that I was hoping for.
Hey, yo, Def Leppard. What? Is the song over?
So was all this storyboarded out at any level, or were they just giving you material and they're like, hey, throw this together?
There was a storyboard version of this. It was kind of minimal. So like that's why I was pulling from wherever I could. And Phil had this idea about, let's pull stuff from YouTube even. There was some slow-mo drawing on YouTube with paint. I think he kind of literally wanted that in. Production design kind of went a different route with it, sort of would take on their own life, and what would come back would be great.
We're seeing the finished version, but how did this look like at that very early stage?
His name is Miles Morales.
Drum beat, see?
Yeah.
Right into Miles. So that's the vibration and twisting I was putting on to give the feel of being in the drums.
He's got a tough job.
So the energy and the feel is already there.
That's what we went for. Sometimes it's just graphics, like going across the screen.
Oh, that's interesting.
So that's that version of that other shot.
So that was kind of foreshadowing the canon event sort of narrative.
Exactly. Yeah.
Interesting. And there's the flashback shots, yeah. Yeah, there we go. And then there's a new perspective.
The moment on the train, basically, right? So that's the equivalent of that.
A lot of the seeds are being planted here. But then there is an animated shot.
Gwen drumming is from the first movie. The first time she does her talk up.
Yeah.
That's what that's from.
You really are grabbing anything and everything from anything that you can.
And I just cropped in on it so it wasn't the same shot.
Yeah, so I didn't instantly recognize it. It's interesting. The moment I said, that's a new shot, I was like, that is from the last movie. I felt so dumb for a second. What was that?
That's meant to be Peter. This was meant to be literally superimposing sort of an image of Miles and Peter. She doesn't want to lose Miles the same way, which is the reason for what she does. People were a little confused about some things in the storyboard phase. That's the kind of thing I'm talking about. Because of the different stylings of all the board artists, you don't obviously recognize who that is. I think that might be part of the problem. I can see why people were confused, but that was the idea.
A lot of it was like, this is kind of full of so many different ideas of what could be done here. But it seems to be the discipline of actually what you should take out. Yeah. And then focus on what is probably the core, most important elements we do need to set up for this whole story.
And it was always meant to be, here's the inspiration, here's the groundwork. You guys, we pass it on to the next department. Please give us gold that takes it to the next level, and you hope that happens. The animators gave us a lot of great stuff. So it just kept getting better and better.
I think you know the rest, but you don't.
It is a lot faster. Yeah. We're already building it up. Like, it's into that peak part. It's foreshadowing the Orme.
A little glimpse of punk in there. A little glimpse of even the future in the next movie in there if you're looking closely.
Oh, okay. Maybe we're not allowed to see that part. Oh,
she's going to slap me if I show you that. No.
We might have to I might have to cut that part out.
Well, when we put it in there, it was meant to be.
Hey! Def Leppard! What?
So Riverside's been partnered with us for almost a year now, and we wouldn't be able to create this without them.
We use it to record every remote interview for our show. It's an absolute necessity.
It's been one of our most reliable tools for our workflow. This is online software that records your screen, your camera, and audio all separately and uploads it to the cloud. That means you can end up with multiple files that you can edit separately, giving you full creative control in the edit.
It also doesn't give you bad recording quality like other video call softwares do. It gives you 4K footage. It looks professional as frick. Also, if your connection drops during the interview, it doesn't matter because Riverside records locally, so no footage will ever get lost.
More than just recording, Riverside has amazing post-production tools as well to help you create your show as fast as possible. Riverside generates AI transcriptions, which you can use to then do text-based editing on your show. And if you want to introduce the guest, you can pop your script in a teleprompter and off you go.
And lastly, you can use magic clips. Basically, you can automatically create shorts from your long-form show right in Riverside with the click of a button. You can do everything from pressing record to pressing publish right in Riverside.
You can sign up to Riverside for free and use the code editingpodcast for 20% off the paid version.
Back to the conversation.
I remember for me at this point, just the emotion was like, I was being overwhelmed in a really great way. Like, oh my God, this is going to be fantastic.
So you were in.
I was in. One of the things we're getting out of this is that, like, we'll often feel compelled of like, you got to start the story straight away. You got to start the film with like an explosive action sequence. Whereas this is kind of going, no, we're going to start with just emotion. We're going to start with tone. We're going to start with feeling. We're going to kind of let you get settled into this. And I think that's how I kind of feel about this whole opening sequence. It's just like the opportunity for us to settle in and telling us this is how the film's going to feel.
And the other curveball is it's not Miles. It's Gwen. She has the whole first reel to herself.
She does,
crazy.
yeah.
You know, that's a Miles movie. And then we don't see him until the beginning of the second reel. You know, there was a lot of debates about how much Gwen we should have at the beginning of the movie. Phil was the one that was like a big believer in let's give her her moment because it sets up so much down the road. And he was dead on right. You know, on top of what you're saying, there were ideas of like, no, let's make it a real slam bang cold open and start at the Guggenheim.
Yuri, explain to me how a guy with a 40-foot wingspan just waltzed into the Guggenheim unnoticed.
Hey, it's New York. Everyone's got their thing.
If we did that, we wouldn't have all the setup with Gwen and her father.
She killed your friend.
You don't know that.
What do you mean I don't know that? I do know that. You know, I was there. She ran from the scene.
Maybe she didn't have a choice.
I got a job to do, Gwen.
It won't bring him back.
You know, you needed those moments. And those were like slow, tender moments to kick off a movie with. It laid all the perfect groundwork for, you know, what happens between them down the line.
I've thought about telling you, but you can see why I didn't want to. You can see why I didn't want to tell you. I didn't murder Peter.
All of that was absolutely necessary. I think I even remember when I was first watched this, it was like 20 minutes in, I was like, I haven't seen Miles yet, but I'm loving this.
Good.
Starting it with the action sequence again, like maybe that could have been interesting, but I think the emotional impact, the emotional context of all of that would have been gone.
Yeah.
I would even say like starting it with the drums here, and then those drums coming back when the helicopter's coming down.
Right.
That wouldn't land as well because we wouldn't have had that set up as much.
I mean, there's a balance of like how much setup you need to do and want to do, and you got to make it not overstay its welcome and keep it moving. And we did a lot of work to make that feel that way, you know, because the scene that follows, there's Peter dying, her backstory of all of that.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
That'd just be a bit longer, and we had to like kind of condense it because it felt like we were digging into that a little too deep, and we didn't need to.
It's interesting that you say that though, because I think quite a few people felt that the story structure of this movie was a little bit weird, me included.
Yeah.
And I was just like, okay, I feel like the story, like it felt like the cliffhanger, was it earned? Was it not? I'm not sure.
So you weren't happy with the ending? Is that what you're saying?
I don't know. I don't know. I wasn't like super, I don't know. I felt like it wasn't quite earned. I felt a little bit unsatisfied at the end, but
some people did. I mean, that's sort of the problem with a cliffhanger ending.
Yeah.
Too, is like it was sort of unavoidable to some degree.
Cliffhangers are just so difficult to do.
They're so hard to do.
And because it is technically the signal of saying the story's not over. And then it's like, well, I've just tuned in for 2.5 hours for this, and then you're not giving me the ending. And it's just like, and so part of that frustration is like, well, what did I sit down for? For me, it was the moment to be continued. It's like, no! And then I got excited about the fact that I now have to wait.
Yeah, absolutely.
But then also that works on the opposite end. It's just like, oh, I have to wait? Fuck you. It's just like, why would you do this to me? And I was like, I think both are right. It can be a frustrating thing, but then like, but when you guys were, because I know this movie was originally meant to be just a singular one, and then it got split into 2 movies. And so I guess this cliffhanger came sort of because of that then.
We were long, and we had a whole back half of the movie assembled in a very rough state. You know, we had a couple screenings and having panic attacks, thinking about how do we fit all of this in one movie. And someone came up with the idea of like, well, let's make it a 2-parter. So then the next question was, well, where do we split it?
Yeah.
You know, one of our last previews, we got that note.
Oh,
like,
really? Interesting.
People were angry.
Really?
Like we kind of left off too much. But at the time, the movie ended with Miles tied to the bag. People were pissed off. and we were like, oh, okay. And it did feel too dark. You know, we needed to end on a lighter note. And the perfect moment seemed to be leaving Miles in distress. But we added, you know, very late in the game, we had a little hint of I'm getting out of here, right? With his little, you know, venom strike thing he's about to do. And
so that adds on. That's interesting. So that's a nice little seed planting.
We didn't want to leave him feeling like, you know, he was lost. We want to feel like he's going to do something too. And there's Empire Strikes Back. Han Solo's in his whatever.
Yeah.
And the team is gathering to rescue him. So that all that stuff with Gwen came very late in the game. We did that like in the last couple months. I think Bob Persichetti was the one that said, let's bring back the voiceover from the beginning where she's talking about joining a band.
Yeah.
She says, I never wanted to join a band.
I always wanted to be in a band. Guess I just never found the right one. I never found the right band to join. So I started my own.
Yeah.
That's so good.
I love that movie,
That part was awesome.
I've always wanted to, I've always wanted to join a band, and she has a band. Yeah. That's so you're closing that loop in that way.
Exactly.
And so maybe that's a satisfying moment.
Didn't satisfy you though. We tried.
I mean, I'm sure I'm definitely a small group. I think a lot of people like absolutely were so stoked on it. And I really understand the Empire Strikes Back comparison. I feel like Luke was the hero in that story, and he's the guy that, he's on the rescue team. Yeah, he's on the rescue team instead of being the guy in Carbonite. And I think that's maybe where the disconnect there.
But I guess also, would that then make Gwen Luke then? Because she was the hero coming to rescue, and then
it's true.
Miles is the Han Solo in Carbonite moment.
This was partially Gwen's movie too, and like we were talking about in the beginning, she took over the first reel. She would, there was a lot of it was her story too. Personally, loved that ending. You know, we quickly put in layout quickly. We did all that super fast, and it came together, I think, perfectly. I love it. To me, it was much more rewarding to have that kind of ending.
Making a satisfying cliffhanger. That's like an oxymoron.
But seriously.
What if you made a video essay on the incredible editing of Euphoria, but you were actually able to use the Euphoria soundtrack in your video? Well, that's exactly what we did on our Euphoria episode.
The story of Euphoria is there is little story.
Now, some of you may be wondering, how the heck did we get to actually use that soundtrack without getting demonetized? The answer is simple. We licensed the song with Licked. Licked is the place for YouTube creators to license the most popular music in the world. They have soundtracks from Barbie, Everything Everywhere All at Once, Lord of the Rings, and there's also pop songs from mainstream artists like Justin Bieber, Dua Lipa, Bruno Mars, and so many others. You simply license the track you want to use at an affordable price, and Licked makes sure that there's no copyright claims on your video. Music is so important to convey the feeling, the tone of your edit, so don't settle for anything less than exactly what you're looking for. Go to the link in the description to sign up for Lick today and get 50% off your first mainstream music track and 14 days of free stock music.
One of the things I'm finding really most fascinating about this is that last year we interviewed some of the OG editors of Pixar, and they introduced us into the editorial concept. The editor was essentially the hub of everything. The writers with the music, even the directors, production design, everyone kind of to an extent reported back to the editor, and they were the center hub. Was that a sort of similar workflow with this as well?
I think in an ideal studio universe, they would go like, all right, story does their thing, kicks it to editorial, they cut the movie together, it goes to production creates it, you don't change a thing, just keep it moving. And I would say less linear than that. I think more circular in a way, like, things were constantly evolving. Our approach was, if it needs changing, change it. And we did. We just attacked it at any stage and just constantly just try to make the movie better. And Phil is great at that. He's like, he just never wants to give up. He wants to make the best movie he can possibly make. Many times where you'll get the layout back, even to animation, where you'll go, wait a minute, something happened. It's not as impactful as it used to be. I keep everything stacked so that I can always check every layer of everything that comes in, and the storyboards are there. And so I can always bounce back and go, this is what we did in storyboards. During the chase, and they go through the gym, and there's a guy doing the Iron Cross, and Miles runs across him. Then the whole crowd runs across. In boards and layout, it was always funny because his webs broke and they just collapsed. This was always worked. We knew we've screened this. We knew this was funny. We don't want to break this. Animation went a different route where they all flew up in the air like a rubber band. It was a good, valiant effort to try to embellish it. And then when we screened it, it fell flat. And we're like, oh, wait, we got to go back to the other one. And this was very late in the game, and I think the international version has the rubber band, because we were on the mix stage when all this stuff was coming in. And then the final version went back to the claps.
You've mentioned this a couple of times, like the international version and like the domestic version. I think so many people went into conspiracy theories about why is there many different versions, but it was because the movie wasn't finished.
And we were still making it better. But if someone's admitting to that means they're committing piracy because
they're using a VPN.
Because they're watching the international version somehow. Chris and Phil addressed this in an article already. They already said like that all got blown out of proportion. It was just very simple. We had to meet a deadline for France and some other country, and we had to ship that version. But we were still on the mix stage. We were still working. We didn't want to just stop.
It's just because of the fact there was a multiversal movie. It was like the conspiracy is like, depending on where you are on continent, you get a different multiverse movie. The movie wasn't finished yet.
We didn't go that crazy. No.
The one thing I'm definitely very interested in, I think, when this movie was released digitally, animation Twitter went crazy and all the animators started showcasing just the iterations that they were making, them workshopping like how they were going to do it.
Why would I do that?
I love the fact that he matches the posing.
Did he actually change his hair to do it?
Maybe. And it's just such a very smart way of workshopping that.
This is crazy. I haven't seen these yet either, bro. These are so cool.
Were you getting this as a shot in your editing, or is it because it was going through their versions first?
Sometimes they'll shoot 6 versions of that, and they'll show the directors and go, well, which one do you like? And they'll go, I'll take C. And then they start working from that one.
I'm from another dimension.
You are?
Yeah, that was a fun one.
Wow.
Have you not seen these?
I haven't even seen this stuff. They would. I wish I got all this reference because I wanted to cut a whole version of the movie together with just reference stuff. And, and it's great when they do like 3 characters in a scene and they all act together. It's really fun.
It's like an alternative storyboard in a way, like when they film themselves and then, they get the body language and they know how to do that. The one that I found the most fascinating because it was about the timing of the role and how this was iterated.
And so that's not even a storyboard artist. That's actually the animator boarding stuff as their reference. Like that's their version of like.
So the animator boarded it themselves.
That's not
sent that to the director, and then the director then gave feedback.
Vulture picks up someone and flies away. We thought that was a little too harsh and dropped.
And
she had to rescue them. But it was like too much. Let's wait on that a second and let her get into it with Vulture without someone getting snatched right off the bat.
So what was interesting for me then is like the director was giving lots of notes about the timing of it all. Like this is now changing the idea. So like the story is changing a lot, and then you get this sounds like tum tum tum. And at a basketball.
The basketball was important.
How do you keep that straight in your brain? Like if you're working with so many different departments and getting material constantly.
It's insane. it's, there are moments of like, holy cow, I mean, I have a very kind of calm, cool demeanor, and I just sort of ride it out, and insanity comes into my room at all times, and I just go, I take Aaron's words, just keep going.
Just keep going.
So you just kept on just making the movie and making it better and better and better and better until, was there a point when it was like that deadline day and I was like, all right, that's it. I guess the movie's done, and then you send it off.
It was never done. Like that was the running joke. Is like we're because working on the mix stage, like I was saying, it's like I've never worked that deep. It's a different world now with digital, and you can push it a little closer than you used to. You're not making prints, so it's like, well, you can that window. I'm sure, like there were Sony executives and post-production people that were freaking out, but like we were going to use every second we could, to make it the best it could be.
I think this is a really, really great example of like movies are never finished, just abandoned. I think it's just like, all right, I guess it's in cinemas. Okay, fine. I guess we'll call it a day.
I've worked at other studios where they're like, no, you're not changing that. They draw the line. Phil and Chris have some street cred, and they know it works. The studio knows that they will make the movie better no matter what. They're never going to go backwards. It's always going to get better, so it's worth it.
You mentioned Phil a lot. I think Phil Lord, I know this was kind of like sort of his passion project in a way as well. And I think there was also alongside the other directors as well.
There were 3 directors on the movie: Joaquim Dos Santos, Kent Powers, and Justin Thompson. They all come with their own superpower. There's so much to deal with on this movie. The director's incredible at certain things that they excel at, and we're allowed to just run with those things. Like Joaquim Dos Santos is one of the greatest boarders, if not the greatest boarders I've ever worked with. He's incredible. So he was boarding a lot, and he was involved with like layout and getting the camera because he was really good at that stuff. Kemp's a great writer. He was always really great to have in the room with our editing sessions. He was always a voice of reason. Like if Phil and I were going off the rails, he was like, no guys, it was better before. Thompson was the production designer on the first movie. He still had to wrangle a lot of that on this movie. You can see his work. It's phenomenal. People have said this in reviews and stuff, and it's totally true. You could take any frame and it's a magical painting on your wall.
So true.
It's just beautiful.
It really
Look at
is.
that. I mean, that's crazy.
It's interesting because it's like everyone kind of knows their strengths. Everyone kind of knows like what is their superpower, and giving them each of them the opportunity to like, this is the opportunity for me to like showcase that power. Equal collaboration. It kind of felt like that in a way.
A weird commune of people that are just all, trying to reach the same goals.
I'd love to know how that did work in terms of your workflow. And I would say it is, you're getting some direction from this person, direction from this person, direction from this person, and they're all coming in with their own ideas. I would love to see how that was then translated into the train sequence.
A great example of the animation team taking something and running with it. In the storyboards for that version, it was a much simpler move that Miles put on just there, and animation turned it into this like complicated but cool move.
It's a really great showcase of just how capable he is against these people.
Yeah, exactly.
He did just beat you, so I'm not a terrible mentor. You're both equally terrible. Does that settle it?
I mean, if you're really paying attention, we definitely took a leap there to get Miguel that close to him. We cut a couple shots out of the middle of that. There was a couple more car jumps.
You're right.
A little bit of a cheat.
It's kind of just insane with the amount of skills that he has.
Well, he's taking over as the villain basically, so he's got to be intimidating.
Stop pretending you know where you're going. I have a plan.
This train is so cool.
Yeah.
I love that shot through the side. That's layout.
Okay.
See how the images are kind of broken?
Yeah.
Haven't told you yet. Haven't told you yet.
That's animation, so it's not lit yet. Here comes storyboards.
And then there's the storyboards.
This is a different artist. You're going to see a variety of artists in here, but Joaquim's in here too. I mean, that's almost verbatim what the movie is right there.
It is,
right?
yeah.
Look at all that imagery going at you again. I was surprised when this came back from lighting and effects, like, oh my God, it's so much. And there's a lot of like advertising built into the rings and wording going by, lights flashing. And I was worried that we lose sight of meaty moments that we need to do. But it was another one of those things where, there goes my first instinct going down the wrong path. And I get it now. It's great. No, it's genius because it just intensifies everything that's happening.
claws? Dude, are you sure you're even Spider-Man?
Are you? Who do you think you are?
This section coming up here is something the animation team broke down and created.
My name is Miles Morales.
I've never seen a moment like that ever before. We have that slow moment where it's like he has the motivation of like, okay, I'm gonna fight back. We jump cut ahead of time.
He's already leapt, but he hasn't leapt.
Then we see him jump off again.
I know.
What was the creative decisions in doing that? And I also absolutely loved it.
I wasn't there the day they came up with this, but I have a feeling this smells like Bob's work to me. I think he might have encouraged this.
So even for you, like you got this and was like, I don't know what just happened, but I love it.
Yeah.
I think I almost applauded at that moment in the cinema.
Wow. I wish I was sitting next to you.
My name is Miles Morales.
Oh, I see. Yeah, the difference. Whereas,
and they have this?
And I have that in there only because we didn't have that in ports.
okay.
It was created in animation.
I was bitten by a radioactive spider. I'm pretty sure you know the rest, jerk.
Yeah, right there. So he's getting yanked under, and so he's out of control.
Yeah.
He ends up bouncing off all the cars.
I'm pretty sure you know the rest, jerk.
He goes back under where the traffic is, under the train. And this one, he ends up kind of being yanked under by his own web. So it's not as successful. I mean, you'll see it in the boards. He's like a little more conscious of going in and like.
Oh, interesting. Because if he's competent and then Miguel gets him, it's like that makes Miguel feel even more powerful. But then also him still being clumsy also reiterates that he's still a developing Spider-Man.
Right. Like
I think both work.
No, totally.
What's up, man?
But I know who that is.
I know who that is too.
You do?
The Smiler. That's the scary smiling guy.
So you're out nerding me now. I don't know what you're getting at.
In the first Spider-Verse, there was a few times where there was in class, there was a scary smiling person, like really, really creepy smile. In the first act of this movie, he's somewhere in Brooklyn as well, just awkwardly smiling at him. And I'm pretty certain that's the same character model.
I think you're right. My associate worked on the first one and he was well aware of these things, all these little details, and he would be able to confirm that. But I think I remember him saying something about that.
So it's either a weird Easter egg or a potential twist reveal in the third movie.
It might be that thought out, or it's just they used the same model.
I'm looking too much into
throw
it.
somebody in.
I'm looking too much into it. Okay.
What's up, man?
That was cool, though. And just the way stylistically Miguel just comes in, how terrifying he is because of just those frame changes.
And originally in the boards, Miles is not on the hood, he's on the side, and the guy's just sitting there sipping a drink. It's not the Smiler or whatever, it's with the mask on.
And then he goes
through
through
the window.
Yeah. We didn't have to pan that way. So that was debated whether this was better or not, but it's one of those things we let animation run with it, and it worked out great.
You don't get it! You're an anomaly!
If you let me go home.
What you're about to see here was Joaquin's martial arts come into play, where he gives him the elbow in the face 3 times, and he insisted it had to be 3 times.
Everywhere you go, you're an anomaly!
Boom!
Yeah, beautiful. Brutal and beautiful. I put those 2 words together.
Yeah, that was great.
Brutal.
Yeah, that was gnarly.
Everywhere you go, you're an anomaly!
There was only 2 there, wasn't there?
Yeah, and I think the framing of that was different too.
Two different shots.
That's kind of the situation where, well, maybe we don't. They do this a lot in production where they go, oh, we can just combine those and make that one thing.
Fair enough. I love the fact that wow, it was such a interesting change, and it was just a simple
We just wanted
choice.
to cut some shots.
I saved some money that way. You know? Some of this action stuff, like I was saying, this is all Joaquin's boarding. You'll see, it's just amazing.
You're the original anomaly!
It's always good to throw in a nice wide here and there, like to break
That's
things up.
interesting.
Level wide.
It was a little break, I would say, for them as well.
Yeah, exactly.
The spider that gave you your powers wasn't from your dimension!
This is one of those things we needed to be closer to Miles, see him registering all this stuff. He's still in a little bit of denial.
No! You're lying! I'm Spider-Man!
That's crazy.
Yeah.
That's a crazy shot.
I even love the little details here where it's comic book note there.
Yeah, exactly.
That's so cool.
But it's for one frame, but it's just such a fun detail towards it all.
It's so cool that Miguel's world, they do this where like the lines go, off as if you
Like you're sketching it.
left the original sketch still there.
You're lying. I'm Spider-Man. You're a mistake.
That's one of the most famous shots from it, actually, in terms of marketing.
What came aboard of that early on, it was part of like I think a test animation piece.
That was a test
put
shot
together
from the teaser. I
earlier.
remember it from the teaser trailer. Yeah.
So it was done very early. That's why that's why I made it in the teaser. That's because it was done prematurely, and we had forced it to work in the movie.
Wow.
That's crazy.
But that's a perfect example of what Kim could do.
If you hadn't been bit, your Peter Parker would have lived. Instead, he died, saving you.
Oscar kills this.
Oh, yeah.
You don't belong here. You never did.
Let me go.
Miguel, that's enough.
This isn't what we talked about. You talked about this? You knew? You all knew?
And the music drops again.
Yeah.
Well, how was that moment chosen to be made?
Yeah, I mean, the biggest challenge we had in this area was where to place that narration. One of the things that happened with this scene was it was a lot of chase, fight, fight. When it's first boarded and it's a lot of cool action, the thing you realize is, okay, that's all very cool, but we're lacking character. We need those moments. Like we need to see Miles' reactions. We need to see what he's thinking. We need, we just have to make sure we carve out those. Every movie I've ever worked on, you always got to remember protagonist. Give him the ball, let him run with it, focus on him, hinge it on him. Sometimes you forget. You get caught up in all those.
You get so caught up, yes. Oh my God, it's got such great spectacle. Look at these amazing images. Like, oh, but whose perspective is this in?
And so we backed up, and this was Phil's idea to like, wait a minute, why don't we take some of this dialogue on top of the train?
You don't get it. You're an anomaly.
Not if you let me go home.
Everywhere you go, you're an anomaly. You're the original anomaly. The spider that gave you your powers wasn't from your dimension. It was never supposed to bite you. There's a world out there with no Spider-Man to protect them because it bit you instead. No. You're not supposed to be Spider-Man. You're a mistake. If you hadn't been bit, your Peter Parker would have lived.
These lines, we brought these down from on top of the train and mixed them into this battle and lay it through the rest of the scene.
Because of course it's like he's a masked character, and then of course there's so much movement anyway, you can just throw it pretty much anywhere. That's interesting.
The joy of working on this movie is you can put lines anywhere with masked characters.
You don't get it. You're an anomaly.
Not if you let me go home.
Everywhere you go, you're an anomaly. You're the original anomaly. The spider that gave you your powers wasn't from your dimension. It was never supposed to bite you. There's a world out there with no Spider-Man to protect them because it bit you instead. No. You're not supposed to be Spider-Man. You're a mistake. If you hadn't been bit, your Peter Parker would have lived.
That's such a great point of making sure this action's character motivated, and so those sprinkles of that conversation kind of breaks it up.
Right, exactly.
Because we mentioned how action can just turn into an action sequence, and we keep coming back to that, and it kind of just helps this entire action sequence be character motivated.
And the moments where Miles' heroic glory are always fulfilling.
Yeah, throwing in those moments helps the peak emotion of the scene.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm gonna do my own thing.
The build, and then the quick cuts of boom, 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 and off goes Miguel. I think animation doubled the length of him tumbling.
Yeah.
That's one of the best moments in the movie, right?
Yeah.
The rising hero there.
Bye, Gwen.
That's something that's really cool. I thought animation did where he just releases without moving. His body just goes.
What I'm getting out of all this is that, to an extent, I'm interpreting this as there seemed to be a bit of chaos.
I didn't say that.
It seems to be the chaos has been handled because of just communication. People are just talking. People are not assuming. It's like, hey, we should try this. We should try this. Everyone seems to be on the same page amongst the chaos.
Let's help shove coal in the engine. Let's just keep the train on the tracks. And that's how we got it done. Just keep going.
Just keep going.
Mike, thank you so much.
Mike, thank you so much.